Cue the brass bonanza. We're talking about the 1986 Whalers. I know they are now the Carolina Hurricanes, and I know that I could have done the 2019 Hurricanes to get the Stanley Cup against St. Louis Blues in what we call the Underachievers Bowl. But I feel a lot empathy towards like cities that lost the teams, like their first locations. So anyway, let's talk about the 1980. Well, let's talk about the Hartford Whalers in perpetuity. The Whalers were once called the New England Whalers, and they were in the WHA, the World Hockey Association. New England desperately wanted a team. They even had the games in Boston, but moved to Hartford and Springfield because of some weather problems. So the Whalers were admitted into the NHL alongside the Nordiques, the Oilers, and the Jets, to say the least. So anyway, the Hartford Whalers came in to play the HW. A lot of people thought that they were stealing fans away from Boston, and they were right. However, the Whalers did decent in the first year. They made it to the Stanley Cup playoffs. They took on the vaunted Montreal Canadiens, four-time defending Stanley Cup champions. They put them on the brink. Heck, Gordie Howe even scored a a famous goal against Denny Herron in Game 2 of that series. But anyway, the Whalers couldn't muster anything together. And, well, even though they had Bobby Hull and Gordie Howe and had a few WHA castoffs, they just couldn't handle it. Hartford would not get another playoff run until 1986 when they took on the Quebec Nordiques in the battle of the teams that would lose their franchises 10 years later, plus years later. The Whalers shocked the Nordiques by sweeping them in 3 games in the best of 5, facing them against the Montreal Canadiens in the Adams final. Montreal had a lot of rookies like Steve Roney, Patrick Watt, Claude Lemieux, David Malley, I think. But anyway, the Canadiens and Whalers actually played each other hard. Hartford thought they were going to finally get a playoff series victory in their city. Well, their second playoff victory series. But lo and behold, they went to Game 7 overtime, even though Mike Liut was a decent goalie pickup from the St. Louis Blues. Claude Lemieux put the puck over Liut's shoulder, and the Whalers lose Game 7 in overtime. Hartford would feel the sting of it. In 1987, they tried again against Quebec. Unfortunately, the Nordiques got them in a revenge thing, including the Peter Stastny series winner in Game 6. That was very famous for the spotlights and all that. The Whalers would not see another series victory after 1986 when they're in Hartford. They put Boston on the brink of things in 1991, but sadly lost both times. In 92, they took on the Canadiens, and despite them having goalie problems because Frank Pietrangelo is not really a good starter. Well, they swiped Pietrangelo from Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh decided to swipe Ken Reagan from Philadelphia. Well, to get rid of Mark Recchi. But anyway, the Whalers actually were jilted by the Penguins in 91. Speaking of Frank Pietrangelo and all that. Because they traded away John Cullen, Ron Francis, and Alf Samuelson to the Penguins, and all three of them helped the Penguins win the Stanley Cup. But, Hartford was struggling. But in 92, they looked good against Montreal. They put Patrick Waugh on the back burner a little bit. They won Game 6, I believe in overtime, on home ice. And then in Game 7, they were victimized in double overtime by a Russ Courtnall second chance goal. Hartford really felt the sting of it. That was the last time they were wearing those pesky green outfits with the white logo. They switched up their logo and put more emphasis on the gray. Put more gray onto that logo. I really hate that logo. It looks like nasty eyebrows and nasty eyes and all that. But yeah, I understand what the HW is. But anyway, Hartford got tougher. They got Sean Burke from the Devils, who basically didn't want to play for the Devils. And the Whalers thought they were good. But Sean Burke can only carry a team so far. And even though they got Chris Pronger with the second overall pick in the 1993 draft, Hartford wasn't there. Hartford just couldn't handle it. They had Brendan Shanahan, but they traded him to Detroit. They traded Chris Pronger to St. Louis. Hartford just basically was jettisoning people. But they picked up fan favorite Kevin Dineen, who was helping them along. Unfortunately, Hartford's money was coupled with the fact that we're playing in a shopping mall. Yeah, the Harvard Civic Center is inside a shopping plaza. Basically, sunk the Whalers and all that. The Whalers were done in '97, and even though they had one more year left on their lease, they decided to sell the team to Peter Carmolos, who basically put them in North Carolina, thinking that Southerners will probably like hockey and all that. Nah, I don't know about that. Although Carolina did actually get to the playoffs a couple years later and put Boston on notice in kind of an extension of the Whalers Bruins rivalry. The Hurricanes not only lost the series in 6, but they lost Steve Chason by his own drunk driving problems. I never see them. Carolina, 3 years later, would shock everyone by making such a massive playoff run. 2002, they took on the New Jersey Devils, who basically were great. Devils were the Eastern Conference representatives the past 2 years in the Stanley Cup Finals. They won in 2000. They lost in 2001. So anyway, the Hurricanes shocked everyone by beating the Devils. Yeah, I know they were the better seed because they won the weak Southeast Division. But I mean, people didn't think Carolina would be that good. Next opponent, the Montreal Canadiens. The franchise that basically was so successful, it hurts. Hurricanes were down 2-1. They were down 3-0 in the third period of Game 4. It was like, well, Montreal's going to easily take care of Carolina and take on either Ottawa or Toronto in the conference finals. One problem, though, a dumb couple of penalties that Kerry Fraser called got Carolina back on top. And Carolina used the momentum to win the game in overtime on a Nick Wallin goal. Though Canes used that momentum and the fact that they changed goalies from Kevin Weeks to Arthur Urbe during that series. It led to Carolina going to the conference finals against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, being a blue-blooded Leafs fan like myself, I was hoping Toronto would take care of Carolina once and for all and basically go to the Stanley Cup Finals. I know they probably could have lost to Detroit or Colorado, but at least we get to the finals. But Carolina used stifling defense and some overtime game winners to sink the Leafs. Martin Jelena with the nail in the coffin Game 6 in overtime. The Leafs' best chance in a while to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they blew it. To the Canes? Seriously? Arturs Urbe got personal redemption because 8 years earlier, he was part of the '94 Sharks team that suffered a massive Game 6 and 7 loss to the Leafs that got them eliminated from the playoffs. So Arturs Urbe was big. Carolina, heck, even won Game 1 of the Cup Finals against the Red Wings on a goal by Ron Francis. Sadly, though, the Red Wings would win the next 4 games. Carolina even made a bigger run in 2006 by shocking everyone by getting to the Stanley Cup Finals at the expense of Buffalo. Carolina would take on Edmonton, and it was like weird. 2 former WHA franchises going after each other. You just don't see that. Of course, the Jets have never been to a Stanley Cup Final. The Nordiques/Avalanche did, but I don't think they played the WHA team. That would have been Carolina. All that. Because the Oilers have always been in the West. So, yeah, that would have been weird. Weird to see 2 WHA franchises facing each other in the finals. The Canes actually got a gift when UC Markkanen screwed up a play behind his own net in the final minute of Game 1 and saw the Hurricanes win Game 1 next to Rod Brind'Amour. Carolina had a 3-1 series lead and nearly choked it. They lost on a Fernando Pisani overtime goal in Game 5, and in Game 6, Edmonton, in one of the loudest crowds of NHL history, won the game. Game 7 would be a horse of a different color as the Whalers/Canes got their Stanley Cup. They were happy. They gave Carolina something to cheer for. So Carolina thought things would be much easier. In 2009, they made another inspired run to the conference finals, including a conference quarterfinal match series against the Devils. That the Devils were so close; they were a minute and a half away from winning that series. But all of a sudden, they choked, losing 2 games. The Devils gave up 2 goals late in the game, and the Canes got their themselves to the second round against the Boston Bruins. Another addition to the Bruins Whalers series. So basically, I'm like, well, Carolina might beat Boston. I was right. Carolina won Game 7 in overtime in Boston on a Scotty Walker overtime goal. So the Canes were going to the conference finals. Jordan Staal, who was a stalwart, no pun intended, for the Carolina Hurricanes, would take on his older brother. No, sorry. Jordan Staal would be for Pittsburgh. He would face Eric Staal for Carolina. Eric Staal was the mainstay of the franchise. Sadly, though, for Eric, he lost to Jordan, and Jordan ended up winning the Stanley Cup with the 2009 Penguins. That was the last time Carolina made the playoffs, until last year when they used their Storm Surge series of celebrations to basically get the fans on their sides. They were called a bunch of idiots by Don Cherry, and they embraced the name. Nice job, Don Cherry. Carolina embraced themselves all the way to the conference finals against the Boston Bruins. Carolina took care of the New York Islanders in the second round, who weren't supposed to be there. Carolina wasn't really supposed to be there themselves, but yeah, Carolina took care of the Islanders with a big win. Carolina, in fact, became, I believe, the first franchise in history to actually sweep an opponent who previously swept another team and all that. So Carolina got to the Final Four, but Boston got them. Boston getting revenge for 2009, in a sense. So anyway, the What If deals with the 1986 Whalers. Because, you know, it was the best chance for Hartford to get to the conference finals. So obviously Hartford wins the Game 7, as we say. They'll deal with the New York Rangers of 1986. I believe the Rangers have more points than the Whalers, so they'll be the conference leaders. Winner will face Calgary because we don't touch the West. So Calgary will be waiting on the winner. Well, I thought the Rangers had more points, but it was the Whalers, I guess. See right down there, Van Beesbrook versus Mike Liut. Yeah, the Rangers were only 2 games below 500, and the Whalers were 4 games above. So I guess Hartford would have home ice. Mike Liut, part of the St. Louis team that will deal with the What If in a little while. So, see there. Well, the Whalers put up 7 goals to win 7-4. Dean Evison and Ray Neufeld made it 2-0 for the Whalers. Thomas Sandstrom got one back for the Rangers. And then Ruotsalainen and Sexy Rexy made it 2-2. Ron Francis made it 3-2. Sylvain Turgeon made it 4-2. Brian McClellan made it 4-3 for the Rangers. But then Van Beesbrook gives up an early goal to Sylvain Turgeon in the second period and gets yanked. Sylvain Turgeon gets a hat trick. This one, Thomas Sandstrom made it 6-4. But Risto Siltanen scored for the Whalers. So the 96 Rangers, Sandstrom, Grashner, Ruotsalainen, Patrick, Osborne, LaRouche, Laidlaw, Pavlich, Patrick, Brian McClellan, Melnick, Steve Richmond. I knew a kid named Steve Richmond. Brooke, McPhee. George McPhee played for the 86 team. He's an executive star. Ridley, Erickson, Bob Crawford, Hubert, Shoot the Puck, Barry Beck. Hartford had Al Samuelson, Evison, Neufeld, Sylvain Turgeon, Quenneville. Joe Quenneville played for that team. Yikes. Sylvain Cote, Bothwell, Marison Francis, Torrey Robertson, Johnny Anderson, Deneen, Ray Ferraro, Stu Gavin, Paul Lawless, Scott Kleinendorst, really? Greg Malone, Dave Babbage, Bristol Siltanen. Hanlon did much better after Van Beesbrook choked it. Turgeon, Francis, Sandstrom, your 3 stars. Rangers decided to go back to Van Beesbrook. And a mistake. They lose the game 7-6. Richmond gets ejected for charging for the 86 Rangers. Couple of fights. A 2-man power play as Ledyard is serving the... Grant Ledyard played for the 86 Rangers? And then Bob Brook got penalties. On the 2-man power play, the Whalers scored twice. Kevin Deneen and Dave Babbage. Ray Neufeld made it 3-1, but the Rangers came back. Peter LaRouche and Mark Osborne scoring goals. Torrey Robertson got ejected for the Whalers for a headbutt. So both teams have lost 1 player. Joe Quenneville scored a shorthanded goal to make it 4-3. And then on that power play that Robertson cost them, Brian McClellan scored to tie the game at 4. Ray Neufeld made it 5-4 Whalers. Thomas Sandstrom made it 5-5. Tim Bothwell scored for the Whalers to make it 6-5. But Pierre LaRouche scored late in the third to make it 6-6. But Stu Gavin scored at 8:31 of overtime. So LaRouche and Deneen went out with injuries, respectfully. I guess that was the problems with Richmond and Robertson. They basically took out some high-flying offensive players. Ray Neufeld get the first star. Pair of goals. Sandstrom and LaRouche are the second and third star. So 2-0, the Rangers decide to put Glenn Hanlon in the net. I think as a way of thinking that the Whalers are going to just eat him alive. The plan fails as Hartford wins 7-2. John Anderson puts up a pair of goals in the first. Ray Neufeld made it 3-0. John Anderson put up a hat-trick in the second period. Thomas Ostrom made it 4-1, but Ron Francis gets a goal to put Hanlon replaced by Van Beesbroek. Greshner made it 5-2 Rangers trailing, but Paul Lawless and Ray Ferraro scored to make it 7-2. So the Rangers are in deep trouble. They're down 3-1. Van Beesbroek kind of did okay. Sylvain Cote got hurt and had to leave the game. Anderson, Francis, Neufeld. So the Rangers said, well, we have nothing to lose, I guess, except our dignity. Well, they won 6-3. Kevin Deneen scored quickly for the Whalers in the first period, but Sandstrom and Patrick made it 2-1. Sexy Red, Rexy made it 3-1 Rangers. Alf Samson made it 3-2. And Sexy Rexy scored again 4-2 Rangers. Brian McLellan made it 5-2 to put Leo out for Steve Weeks. Ray Neufeld gets angry with call, and the referee puts a 10-minute penalty on him. James Patrick made it 6-2. Dean Evanson 6-3 Whalers lose in the game. Ruotsalainen, Sandstrom, Patrick the 3 stars. So the Rangers are down 3-1. And they won game 5, 5-3. Wow. Ron Francis scored. Steve Patrick. I know James Patrick, but Steve Patrick? Huh. Jan Eriksson made it 2-1 Rangers. Alf Samuelsson tied it at 2. Mark Pavlich and Kevin Deneen scored. So it's 3-3. Peter LaRouche made it 4-3. And then on a power play, James Patrick made it 5-3. Mike Lewis falling. Eriksson, Pavlich, Patrick. Steve Patrick. I don't know who Steve Patrick is. So anyway, John Van Beesbroek, 3-2. The Whalers are like, there's no way there's going to be a game 7. There's a game 7, 6-4. Really? Huh. Thomas Sandstrom made it 1-0, and he made it 2-1. Dean Evanson made it 2-2. Sandstrom gets a hat-trick for the Rangers, 3-2. Kevin Deneen scores a power play goal. Then Jan Eriksson and Mark Pavlich made it 5-3. Leo gets replaced by Steve Weeks. Steve Patrick makes it 6-3. And then Sylvain Turgeon made it 6-4 for the Whalers. Amazing. Steve Weeks did much better in net. Which begs the question, do you put Steve Weeks in for game 7? I guess you have to. Because the Leafs lost 3 in a row. Sandstrom, Pavlich, Eriksson. This would be creepy if the Whalers lose game 7. They decided to put Steve Weeks in the net against John Van Beesbroek. Oh, they won. Usually I'm like, oh crap. I guess that's an L. No, it's not. Not yet. Whalers put up 4 goals in the first period. Babbage, Ferraro, Alf. Rangers, like, whoa. Torrey Robertson gets ejected. Ray Neufeld made it 5-1, putting Van Beesbroek out for Hanlon. Sandstrom got ejected for cross-checking. He's out for the series, obviously. 5-2 Whalers. So I guess Steve Weeks was the answer after all. Sandstrom and Robertson getting ejected, 1 for each side. Ferraro, Samuelson, Steve Weeks. So now the Whalers take on the Calgary Flames, and I believe Calgary will have home ice. They better have home ice because I think they had home ice against the Habitants anyway. Mike Fernan, not Reggie Lemon. Quinn Bozak, Neil Sheehy, Paul Baxter, Paul Reinhardt, and Paul Baxter. So the Flames had 4 more points than the Whalers, so that's why they're in. Steve Weeks leaves for Mike Liut. They decided to put Liut back in the net for confidence. And Calgary said, confidence, Schmausland. Gary Sutter scored. Sylvain Turgeon made it 1-1. Dan Quinn made it 2-1 and 3-1. Dan Quinn, eh? Ray Neufeld made it 3-2 for the Whalers. But Joe Otto scored a key goal to make it 4-2. Dean Evanson made it 4-3. And then fighting happened. Neil Sheehy got booted for first knee with the Flames. Bozak and Mirison fought. Jamie McCallum made it 5-3. Paul Baxter gets ejected for his cross-check, so the Flames lose 2 players. And they still win the game, 5-4. Mike Fernan was great. Was not Quinn, Terjan Fernan, your 3 stars. They decided to leave Mike Flew back in the game. But like, that was probably a fluke. And 9-8. 9-8. That can't be right. 9-8? Really? It was 4-4 after one period. Whalers had Terjan, Anderson scoring goals. Flames had Cavallini. Do you know Cavallini? I thought he played for the Blues in '86. Joe Mullen and Dan Quinn, 4-4. Ray Neufeld scored a goal to make it 6-4. Vernon replaced by Mark Delmore. Sylvain Turgeon puts a hat trick. Joe Otto. Sheehy gets booted for headbutting. Gino Cavallini gets a hat trick to make it 7-7. Sylvain Turgeon makes it 8-7. Paul Reinhardt tied the game at 8 late for the Flames. And then Stu Gavin scored for the Whalers, 9-8. Wow. Both with 68 shots on target. Demore was the GOAT. Sylvain Cote got hurt for Hartford. Mike Fernan was just terrible. Turgeon, Cavallini, Anderson. They said Fernan probably had a bad game. Game 3. Well, he lost. Torrey Robertson, Kevin Dineen, John Anderson, Ryan Ferreira. 4 quick goals for the Whalers. Yes, Kerry Wilson scored on the power play. But anyway, the Whalers, they actually came back. Kerry Wilson, it was 4-3. Alf Samuelson had a double minor, but they couldn't capitalize. The Whalers lose 5-4. Poor Mike Fernan, I gotta feel bad for him. So then, at 2-1, they decide we might need Lemon in the net. Fernand's giving up goals very quickly. That plan didn't work. 7-2 is your score. So the Whalers put up 3 quick goals in the first period. Francis Evison, Stu Gavin. Ray Neufeld and Eddie Bears scored 4-1. Charlie Bourgeois checked from behind. He's gone. 2-man power play. Ray Ferraro made it 5-1. Lemlin is out. Demore in the net. Gary Sutter made it 5-2. Sylvain Turgeon made it 6-2. And then Torrey Robertson made it 7-2. So I guess Lemlin wasn't the answer either. Bourgeois got ejected. Evison, Neufeld, Robertson. At 3-1, you got to put Mike Fernan back in net. You're back at home. I guess Mike Leo learned that you can't just glide when you're up 3-0. And play Brass Bonanza. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. 10-5 your score. Hartford. What a lot of goals going on. Here we go. Mark Fernan sucked again. Demore had to be in net. Leo gave up 5, but he still won the game. Brad Anderson didn't get 3 stars. Hartford scored with Dean Evison, Ray Neufeld, Sylvain Turgeon, Joe Glenville, even potted one with Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen, John Anderson, Ray Ferraro with 2 goals and Torrey Robertson. He scored 1. The Whalers won the game 10-5. Brass Bonanza. Wow. I didn't think Hartford had it in them to knock down Calgary, but they did. Proves me wrong.